Dear audience, I would like to talk about PRISMA guideline, and I have a really easy job because my colleagues gave great presentations about their topics, so I'm going to kind of summarize it up according to the PRISMA guideline. PRISMA is the preferred reporting items for systematic review and meta-analysis. It gives you the flow and the steps what you have to take during your work, and it gives you the items you have to mention and you have to define in your publication. PRISMA consists of the statement and the explanation. These publications can be found on this PMID number, and it shows you and explains you a checklist and the flow diagram, which documentations need to be attached for your with your presentation, with your publication. Okay, so let's talk about checklist. You can find it on the web page and in this publication. This is a 2 pages documentation with 7 headings and 27 points or items. Again, it gives you the flow and the steps what you have to take. I will not go much into the details. I will only highlight the suggestions what we have for you about the tricky items. So the title, in the title you have to identify your report as a meta-analysis or systematic review. It needs to be as short as possible, but informative also. Peter will give you hints how you can manage these points. The registration. My colleague gave a great presentation about Prospero registration. It's really important because you have to write the registration number in your manuscript, and it is really recommended to register your work for a higher quality publication achievements. If you need any modifications in your registration, you can do that, but you have to explain why you needed that. In case of meta-analysis and systematic review, you have to read a few articles, so it's not difficult for you to have the rationale of your work because you have a clear background which helps to understand the significance of your work. You can easily add. You can easily nominate what you can add to the prior knowledge, and you can write down why you need that publication. You have to define your PICO. Andrea gave a presentation about that, so I don't think you're going to have any problems with your PICO question and you're defining your PICO. You have to describe clearly the inclusion and exclusion criteria because if it influences the searching and it can prevent biases in your selection process. Zsolt was talking about this, and also the searching literature, really, really detailed. What I would like to highlight that, as he said, the gray literature not suggested to be used because it's lower your quality, the quality of your work. But if you have only gray literature, don't afraid to use that, because finding this gap in your topic, you can have your own investigation, like register or a clinical trial based on this finding. So if you only have a gray literature, don't afraid to use that. The searching query is need to be defined also in your publication. You have to detail it in one major database, and it's really important that it has to be reproducible. It means that with your search query, every other authors should achieve exactly the same results. I suggest you to ask your colleagues to test your searching strategy. The selection process is really important that 2 independent reviewers needed to take it, and Balint gave you a great explanation about that. It prevents mistakes, so ask your colleagues to check it with you. All the selection process need to be described in the flow diagram, and you have to attach it to your publication. You have to give numbers of your studies you screened, the numbers you assessed for eligibility, and include it in your review. So this is really important. And also, here you have to write down the duplicates you, the duplicated records what you excluded. The data collection process, Bálint Erős had a speech about that. Don't forget to contact with your biostatisticians, because the type of data you need to collect is really important to have it discussed with the biostatistician. You can list two kind of outcomes, primary and secondary outcomes. We suggest you to have strong outcomes like mortality and severity as primary outcomes, because these are the outcomes probably other investigators look for, and if you don't mention it, maybe you can lose interest in your publication. Really important to assess the risk of bias, which influences the result and influences the quality of your review. It's not really easy, often it's difficult, so don't hesitate to ask for help. You also need to synthesize the data. This is not easy again, so ask for some help from the biostatistician. Even if you have negative or insignificant outcome, don't afraid to publish it. Even though, because you have registered your interests, so if you registered on Prospero, you have to make publication. And publication is beneficial independently from the results. So even if it's not what you hoped for, publish it. And you have to publish all the outcomes what you were interested in and what you registered in the Prospero, not only outcomes what you favor of. Thank you for your attention. I would like to ask Peter to give his speech about the writing up research.